Hello everyone, this is Linda Sue with Linda Sue Plants for you. And yes, I'm back another day. Isn't it wonderful? Well, it's wonderful for me. I don't know, you guys might be getting tired of seeing me every day, but that's okay. You have the option of turning me off or not watching me if you like. But if you like, here I am. So, alright, today I'm going to talk about this plant, which is very common and to some people probably extremely boring. So the whole video is going to be about my peace lily here. So if you aren't into that sort of thing, then go ahead and move on to something that you want to watch. But I just feel like it's important to talk about this because there is a lot of misinformation on the internet about this plant. And I've been growing peace lilies for many, many years. This particular one, not so much. I've only had this one for, it was 7 years in August. And the reason I remember the exact date is because that's the month that my dad passed away. And this is from his wake. The important thing about this plant is it was big, it was huge, it was gorgeous. And I brought it home and it did not like my house at all. It continued to deteriorate for that whole following year, and it made me so sad because it was really a representation of the memory of my father, and it was devastating to me. I kept losing leaves a little bit here and there, little by little. I'd lose a leaf, I'd get a leaf, I'd get 3 leaves, I'd lose 2, and that went on for a long time. And I didn't give up on it. I did a couple earlier videos way back when I first started doing YouTube, and I was begging for someone to help me, and I didn't really get any responses, I don't believe. But I did see another video of a little Filipino gal, and I wish I could remember, Maya, I want to say. Yeah, I think her name is Maya. And she was having the same problem on her, and she mentioned something about Epsom salt, and I had never heard of using that on plants. So I tried it, and I did lose a couple more leaves. I had some that turned black, like they had a fungus on them. But all of a sudden, within a week or so of using that Epsom salt, it started to perk up. And so I used it again, and it started perking up some more. And then I stopped using it because I thought I might be overdoing. And little by little, this plant did come back. And in the last year or so, she's really starting to take off. Now, here's where my dilemma comes in. I know that these plants love to be pot bound. They like to be, their roots to be tight in the pot. They don't like to be over potted. But I also can see that this plant needs to get repotted because all of my bottom leaves keep doing this. They're yellowing, and they're all on the bottom, and that tells me that this plant is getting too dried out too quickly. And I'm actually watering this plant almost every day, so that's my other clue. I don't mind if I am able, but I'm not always able to water my plants every day. So I don't want to take a chance. So I'm going to take a chance on potting this into a bigger pot, and here's my problem. I want to keep her in a clay pot. That's really important for this plant. And I don't have one that's in between these two sizes. But when I set this inside of here, it's really only about that much bigger. So I think it looks bigger than it is. And we'll find out, I guess. I'm going to be keeping a very close eye. I am going to repot it today. And I'm going to keep a very close eye on it because I would just hate for anything to happen after all of that. So let's get started right away. And I will tell you a few things that I do know about this plant. Some things that I have heard that they only bloom certain times a year. I've heard they only bloom if you use a certain kind of, some kind of chemical on them. I've heard all kinds of different things. And honestly, it's very perplexing to me because I don't find that to be the case. I've never added any kind of special anything. And this plant gets flowers on it all year round. There are times when I got 3, 4 of them on here at one time. And like I said, it truly is all year. And there's no particular time of year that I notice more than others. Right now there's one on it and it's getting brown and it's dying. This is another indication to me that this needs to be repotted. Normally these flowers don't get brown like this. That's a lack of water. They usually just start to wither and then they fade into a light green and then a yellow and then they just die, fall off. But that tells me it didn't get enough water. So, I'm definitely going to repot. And right now I'm taking my, I believe this is called a cake spatula if I'm not mistaken. I'm not positive on that. But it's just a flat. I've graduated from my kitchen butter knife to my cake spatula. I found this in one of my drawers when I was searching for something else. And I thought, oh, I could use that for my plants. I love to cook, but I love to cook on top of the stove. I used to make a lot of gourmet sauces and decorative things, you know, and just really fun stuff. I'm not able to do that right now, and hopefully someday I'll be able to do it again, but I don't really have a use for a cake spatula because I don't bake much. That's my daughter's thing. Whenever we need a cake for a birthday or an occasion, my daughter does that. And she's not much for making sauces, so we actually make a really good team. Alright, I'm going to put a little soil in the bottom of this pot. And actually, I'm going to put a little piece of paper towel in there because the hole in this pot is quite large. And again, I'm starting out with a clean pot and fresh soil. I wanted to put out there too, I wanted to ask you all my viewers, if you have access to pumice. I have been trying to find that for 2-3 years now. The only place I could find it was in California and on the internet, but on the internet the cost of shipping on pumice, because it's so heavy, was just prohibitive for me. So I gave up on that idea and just continued to use perlite. But pumice is better. It's a lot like perlite, but it's more of like a stone. It's not it doesn't have that dust like and it's not flyaway, and it doesn't, it's just better all the way around. It's easier to work with, and I just like it, and I wish I could get it here. I've been after my local garden centers to get it, and I had one. Oh, I just lost a perfectly good leaf, darn. I had one young fellow that works at Stein's Garden Center tell me that, he says, we've been getting so many calls for that. I said, well, who does the ordering? He said, I've already told my manager. And I said, would it help if I wrote a note? He said, yeah, it might. So I wrote a note and I gave it to him, and I asked what day he would be in, and he told me, and I called and talked to him. He says, oh, I don't know. He said, we don't, I wouldn't even know where to get it, blah, blah, blah. He kind of brushed me off, so I just gave up on that idea. But if anybody knows where I can get pumice in southeast Wisconsin, where I can go and pick it up or have my husband go and grab it for me, please let me know. Okay. Now let's see if I can get this in here. It's going to be quite challenging. I've also gone against my own rule as far as watering. I was talking with my friend Suzette the other day, a week ago or so, about this, and I said I'm so scared. So scared to repot this. And she suggested that I water it before I do, to try to keep the root ball from being too much disturbed. And I agreed. I said that's an excellent idea. So even though I don't normally like to do that, in this case I think it is probably the better way to go. So that's what I'm doing. So in case any of you are questioning that, yes, wonderful. Oh, that was so easy. Oh, thank you, Lord. Okay, yay. I'm not going to lift her up again because I feel like I got very lucky just now, but I did look at it, and yes, it is pop on. It's rip on. So I think that I was right on the money. And I'm just cutting off a few, dead little stragglers here. See, here's another one starting. And that's another telltale sign. If it's the bottom leaves that are turning yellow, it's on this type of plant, it's usually because it needs to be repotted. The other thing I wanted to mention, I always try to sterilize my scissors with a combination. In the spray bottle I've got rubbing alcohol and water. However, on this plant and some of my other very sensitive, like my calatheas and the maranta, when I spray this with the alcohol, I let it sit for about a minute, and then I rinse it under water and wipe it off with a clean paper towel. And the reason is, if there's any residue of the alcohol on here, it can harm your plants. There are plants that don't like it, and I did have that happen to me on one of my calatheas. And I would have never have guessed. I mean, if it's dry, how could that possibly be hurting it? But when you have plants that are very sensitive to things, it's very possible. So be careful with that when you're sterilizing with anything, any kind of sterilizer. All right, I'm going to put my, let me get this. There, now you can see it. You know, this camera, I know I've said it before, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. I do that a lot lately. It's got a side flip window on it so that I can see what's in the screen. The problem is when I'm sitting and I'm trying to get the object in the middle of that screen, I always push it the wrong way because I'm going by the screen, not by the camera lens. So, I don't know. It's just one of those little, I don't know if you call it an aggravation, but a dilemma type thing for me. I'm really trying hard to bring you guys a quality video, and it's hard to do. A lot of work goes into these, and when you see these beautiful videos where everything is so detailed and and the room is so bright. Those YouTubers go through a lot of work to set that up, and some expense, I might add. Those lights are not cheap. I've looked at them. And I'm not saying I'll never use them. I'm thinking maybe someday I will. But for right now, it's another thing that I'm going to have to find a place for. And because my physical abilities are very limited here right now, I can't even think about doing that. I've got 2 rooms that desperately need to be cleaned, gone through, stuff gone through, thrown out, what have you. And I am not able to do that. So I have to wait until I can get some help. Once I get that the way I want it, then I might be changing up my whole way of doing things with my plant channel, because I'll have a lot more space to work with then. So we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I watch my own videos just to make sure that they are what I think they are. And personally, I don't think they're that bad as far as lighting. I know there's been a few where I wish it was a little bit lighter, but I kind of like the ambiance of the gold hue to it. It's almost like it's a more natural looking light. But I also like the bright light when I'm watching somebody do something and they got it lit up really well so I can see what they're doing. So I get it. I really do get it. Alright, I'm going to cut this flower off of here. I think I read or learned somewhere that you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to just let them die off. Personally, I don't think it matters either way. I've done it both ways. I've let them die off on their own just because I didn't take the time to cut it. And the plant was fine. And then other times, when it gets really bad, I'll cut it off. Okay, well, oh my goodness. I am so happy that that's done. Now, I want to make sure I'm not filling this too high here. Oh, now I have to just keep my fingers crossed that this isn't going to put her in shock, because peace lilies do not like to be repotted. That is another thing I learned over the years. Even if you're putting them in the perfect size pot going up, they do not like being potted, and they do not like being moved. So if you get her in a spot where she's happy, leave her there. And if you're just starting out, I would suggest you find a place where she's going to live for a long time once she grows up, and start her there and leave her there, because that I noticed is a huge thing on these plants. I've heard that drafts, the slightest drafts can bother these plants. I have not found that to be true either. I have this plant on an open shelving unit right next to my front door, and that's the door we use to go in and out of the house. And, you know, so it lets in the heat, it lets in the cold. In the summertime, sometimes I'll have that door open. Now, if it's a windy day, I won't allow the wind to, batter the leaves all day long. I'll put a door stop behind the door so that it can only open so far, so it's not, really having a tornado-like wind on my plant. But a little breeze here and there does not hurt this plant. At least it hasn't on mine. And I have 3 peace lilies. I've got the domino, and I've got this one, and then I've got another bigger version of this. I think it has a different name. It is a peace lily, but it's not I don't know. It's got another name to it, I think. But we'll get to that another day. That's another problem plant I'm having, because it needs to be repotted, and it's already in a really big pot. It's outgrowing its space. So, and that one I'm going to need help with, obviously, but I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, water. I don't use tap water on this plant. I only use distilled water, and that is well, let me back up. I have used distilled water on this, tap water on this plant, and I got a bunch of browning. I got spots on the leaves. It did not like that at all. So, and it was almost room temperature. It was tepid. It was on the warm side. Not warm, but not, not even cool. And it didn't like it. It did not like it at all. I lost a lot of leaves. I had to cut them off. So I went back to using distilled water, and I haven't had that problem since. Feeding. It does not need to be fed very often. It's not a big feeder. I feed this plant probably maybe twice a year, 3 times a year, if that. I give it worm castings a couple times a year in between the feedings, but this is not a plant that I feed on a regular basis. The few times that I did that, I got browning on the leaves. So I guess the thing is, if you just pay really close attention to your plant babies, they will tell you, what they need, what they like, what they don't like. And we have to either act accordingly or suffer the consequence, I guess. I know when my daughter was little, I did not ever want her to know what sugar was like, because I knew back then how bad it was for us, and I wanted so bad for her not to be a sugar addict. And her one grandpa, oh my goodness, every time I'd take her over there, we'd go over there on a Sunday so my husband could watch the football game with his dad, and she'd come running in the kitchen. Mama, Grandpa gave me a surprise, and I'd have to go in and give him a dirty look, because I know what he did. He gave her a handful of candy. He used to keep hard candies on the coffee table. And oh my goodness, that girl would just be bouncing off the walls an hour later. And it was like that, so I didn't give her candy. We had other kind of treats that weren't sugar, and she loved them. In fact, when she was a little child, when she was about 3-4 years old, you could offer her candy and offer her an apple, and she would take the apple every time. I wish that would have continued throughout her life, but unfortunately it didn't. But anyways, I don't know what got me into that story. It had something to do with this plant. Oh, we were talking about feeding. Wow, that was more than a side road, huh? That was like a U-turn. Okay, so let's get back to my plant baby here. Before I end, I wanted to say, as far as propagation, these are very easy to propagate. You just cut down in between. You can see there's clumps. Well, hopefully you can see these clumps. Turn it this way a little more. And if you just cut down in between these clumps and take that piece away. Now, one thing that's important, when you do that on any plant where you're taking a whole clump of a plant, use a sharp object, a sharp butcher knife, and go straight down with it. Like this, okay? Don't go like this, don't go like this. Go straight down, because you don't want to take off too little roots, and you don't want to take roots off of this part. You don't want to take off too many. And the less damage, the straighter you go, the less damage you're going to do. I've done this outside with my hostas. We started out with 2 little hosta plants, and I've got a yard full of them, and I could have dozens more if I wanted to do the work. But I did that the same way. Go right down in the middle of the plant, find a clump, and cut straight down with that knife, up and down until you got it loose. And then, of course, dig out around the outside of it. But that's just a little tidbit there that I learned over the years. And then finally, I am going to be washing the leaves. I'm not too concerned about tap water on the leaves, because it dries so fast, and I have used it with no problem. I do let the water run for a minute or two before I use it, and then I just take my sprayer in my kitchen sink and I spray. And I try to hold it on the angle. Now, I'm not probably going to be able to do that with this pot because it's awful big, so I may have to resort to using a rag, which is no big deal. I'll just sit here and I'll take each leaf and I'll wipe it off with the rag. It takes maybe 10 minutes. It doesn't take that long to do. And I do that with a lot of my plants. I hand wipe them off. Alright, so I think I've got everything covered here, I hope. I'm going to leave this. I'm not going to water it because I watered it yesterday and that root ball was pretty wet. So I think I'm just going to leave it be. And I'm going to set her back in the living room on that shelf by the front door. And now she's got a whole shelf that's all her own. She used to share it with 2 other plants, but I think she's grown up enough where she deserves a shelf all to her own. Alright, so I will put you on pause and I'll get her over there and then I'll give you a look at where she's going to live for a while. Alrighty, there she is, all tucked in her new home. As you can see, she's got quite a bit of space that she can fill up yet. And she does have to share that space with my my Hindu rope that I got from my sister, because I find that to be the best spot for that plant. This is the shelf that my husband added that grating. We still haven't gotten around to painting it, but he's been so busy with work. One of these days we'll paint that black to match the shelf. But he did put these lights in for me. And as you can see, there are 3 very bright lights around this plant. That was another thing that I forgot to mention in the first part of the video. She does like brighter light. When I have her in anything less than what she's in right now, she starts to decline. So that's another thing to keep in mind. And remember, I mentioned she was near the front door. Well, here's the front door. I have it open today. I have the screens closed. That's glass in the windows. But I do keep a door. That's my little grandson's stool, and I keep that there. And that will stop the plant if it's really windy out, I'll pull that stool out and put it behind the door so that it's not battering these plants. But if it's not real windy and there's just occasional breeze now and then, I let it go, and none of my plants have suffered from it, or it hasn't affected them in any way. So that's it for that. I guess just to recap, you know, medium light at least. They like to be kept pot bound. I use distilled water. I do get flowers on this plant, sometimes 3, 4, 5 of them at one time, and this does flower year round for me. So I must be doing something right. That's about it. I'll be bringing another video on this whole shelf here in the near future, but for now we're going to just have to be happy with this. Alright, plant friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll all come back. If you like the video, if you give me a thumbs up, it really does help my channel. And again, if you know anyone that's would benefit from my videos, encourage them to subscribe. I'm almost there. I'm at I believe 905 today, and my goal is to get to 1,000, so I hope you all will help me do that. Thank you so much for coming back, and thank you all for your comments. I love you all very much. I'm so grateful for you all, and I hope to be around for a long time. Until then, I hope you have a great day, and hopefully we'll be back tomorrow. Bye now.